What is up, everybody? Rubatwatu here, and I have another video for you guys. So my last two videos weren't as well received. I didn't have enough, I guess I didn't make my point as well. I didn't have enough research done. And just that. Before I get into today's video, though, if you want to check out twitch.tv/Rubatwatu, I do a bunch of gameplay, and if you guys are interested, come check that out. So what's today's video going to be about? So basically, since Hearthstone first had its competitive scene and decks ended up having their own deck type assigned to them or name given to them. Let's say Secret Paladin. You have Freeze Mage. You have Zoo Warlock. You have Reno Lock. These are names given to certain decks. There was a name since decks started being named that has always been prominent through each meta, and that has been Control Warrior. Today's video is going to be about how Control Warrior sticks to the same playstyle without really changing that much in its build, and how it stays prevalent in today's meta. So I have four different deck lists for you guys. One was before Naxxramas, one was after Naxxramas, one was before the Grand Tournament, and one is now. And these are four different builds that I did my own research for, and I took multiple different builds and formed how I thought the deck would be built. Deck we played. I actually have no experience with this deck whatsoever. I don't have the money to build a deck on Hearthstone. I don't have the dust. I don't have the cards. But I do have experience in watching the deck being played. I know how to play the deck, and that sort of thing. So first, we're going to start off with pre-Naxxramas. Now, back before Naxxramas was introduced, some of the the stronger decks in the meta, as well as Control Warrior, where you had Miracle Road going around, you had Miracle Road, you had Hunter, more of a face variant. You had Zoo Warlock with Argent Squires with the Divine Shield guys. You didn't play Blood Knight in it, but it was the Divine Shield guys, and just a bunch of minion training going on in that deck. Those are three of the more prominent decks, and the rest were kind of pushed aside. You had Handlock. Handlock was always there, but really didn't really didn't show its dominance until after Naxxramas, after Blackrock Mountain, or maybe Goblins versus Gnomes. Before TGT, Handlock was really strong, just by those who piloted the deck and whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through these four deck lists. I'm going to basically go over in detail the first one and the fourth one, the first and the last, and I'm just going to go over the changes that were made to the second and the third. So here we have the first deck list before any expansions came out. So, one second. The style Control Warrior, right? You need the style control deck in any card game, really, or any game whatsoever, is you want to wait for the late game, and you have all these threats that want to come down. You could compare a class like Druid having a control deck with Ramp Druid, where you would use what's the card? Wild Nature, or the 2-mana Wild Growth, and you gain mana crystals, and you eventually lay down threat after threat. Ancient of War, Ancient of Lore. You had all these 8 and 9 mana cards. That's similar to how Control Warrior ran. You had a bunch of this early game removal. You had your weapons. You had Armorsmith and Crew Taskmaster to get you through to the late game, where you eventually got all of your 5-7 legendaries, your 5-7 threats that your opponents had to deal with. And back then, people didn't really have that much removal in the decks. You had Shamans that had Hexes. You had some Handlocks were the only ones running Siphon Soul. Rogue didn't run Assassinate. They had to get rid of them with a weapon hit, and then like Backstab or Eviscerate. A deck like Hunter needed to run Hunter's Mark to get around these certain threats. So I just want to go through this deck. So you have your Armorsmiths and your Crew Taskmasters. When I was looking up this deck, a lot of people had, since this was the first variant of it, they had a bunch of 1s and 2s in different spaces. How I think Control Warrior should have been run. This is my deck. So you're running your 2 Executes, your 2 Shield Slams, your 2 Whirlwinds, and your 2 War Axes. You needed the 2 Whirlwinds because Death Spite was not out yet, so you need another way to deal damage to creatures. You need to get more Armorsmith procs to proc your Executes, and that such. Since Hunters were a big deal, they ran 1 Cleave to be able to deal with that aggro, and then with Zoo, with their flooding board presence, they needed that Cleave. They were running their 2 shield blocks for that extra 10 armor, which is a big deal back then. The only problem was Naxxramas got around armor until that was nerfed. I don't know how far into the game that was, but just think of it how. So Freeze Mage had a really good matchup versus Warrior at that time, since they would just bring them down to 15 health, no armor, and that such. But then Naxxramas got quote unquote nerfed, or maybe bug fixed, and they only took 15, set the health to 15, and set the armor back to whatever it was. So you have your one-ofs with Frauding Berserker, Sentient Shieldmaster, and Brawl, that aren't legendaries, and one Faceless Manipulator. Faceless was good with Ragnaros, it was good with Grom. In the second, it was good with Baron Geddon, kind of, Sylvanas and all that. Karen was played back then, right? Sludge Belcher was not prominent, it wasn't even out yet, and the cards you were dealing with, maybe, aside from Yeti, which was Druid Plate, which was a 4/5, aside from Yeti, Karen dealt with a lot of it. They ran their Harrison because they didn't have too much draw aside from Acolyte, and there was a bunch of other control where you had to deal with Hunters, you had to deal with Rogues who all had weapons. Sylvanas Brawl was always a combo that was that happened, right? Those two have to sort of stay in the deck together, and Sylvanas was just a really card. I think it was a 5 mana card at the time, 5 mana 5/5. I can't think back then, but this is through a deck builder now, so it doesn't have what it was back then. They ran Black Knight to deal with some taunts, and then their main legendaries of Grom, Rag, Naxxramas, and Baron Geddon. And they also ran the one Gorehowl, because like I said, Deathspite was not out yet. And they didn't want to run Awkward Night Reaper, 5 mana, even though it was 10 damage. They probably didn't think it was worth it, because they had a bunch of other 5 drops. So that was that deck, right? And it did fairly well versus these Hunters, it did fairly well versus the Rogues, and all that. So let's move on to the second one, which was after Naxxramas. Controller got a little bit of a buff, because they got their second weapon that was actually really good. And it gave them more room in the deck. Post-Nax. And then... Okay, this should be the same deck. So... The problem with post-Naxxramas, competitive play-wise, was Hunter was on the rampage because Undertaker came out back when it was +1/+1 for every death rattle you summoned. So no deck aside from Hunter really had a really strong win rate. Miracle Rogue got gutted because of the Gadget Zen buff. Gadget Zen nerfed to 6 mana. The deck just wasn't good anymore. I forget what else they did to the deck. They might not have done anything, but I think it was just the Gadget Zen to 6. So your Gadgets and Conceal was 7 mana, and people didn't want to deal with that. They didn't want to play that. So this is the one after Naxxramas. You got Zombie Chow, which was able to deal with some aggro. This one's running 1 Zombie Chow. You can run 2 in it. I think you could have to deal with the Hunters. It was running a Slam. It was running 2 Cleaves to deal with aggro. Still with the 2 Armor Smiths, and you're including this Deathspite card, right? You were able to remove these 2 Whirlwinds because Deathspite added extra. It added the same amount of Whirlwind effects, but you got another 8 damage out of it. And you're still running Karen in this deck because once Naxxramas came out, a lot of people thought Sludge Belcher wasn't going to be the best card in it, or that great of a card. So it still wasn't seeing much play in many decks. I just put it in here because, let's say, towards the end of Naxxramas, Sludge Belcher was running 2 in basically every deck that wasn't aggro, and even then, like, an aggro Hunter might have run 1 or 2. So, yeah, they, with the Undertaker or Hunter, they probably run 2 so they could curve out Sludge Belcher, this Van Jaime, and all that. But this is basically the same deck, with the inclusion of these expansion cards. So on to pre-TGT, we received a bunch of crap cards at with Black Rock Mountain and Goblins vs. Gnomes. The only good card they really got was Shield Maiden, and so that's what I'm going to talk about real quick. So pre-TGT. So if you look at this deck, oh, you also got Emperor Thorazan, which made your Sylvanas Brawl combo able to be done in 1 turn. For some reason, I must have left out Brawl in this deck. I guess you could cut a Sludge Belcher for a Brawl. I must have not thought clearly. And like I said, in this quote-unquote meta, pre-Grand Tournament, Handlock was on the rise. It was really good. It was always a good deck, but I guess a lot more people were picking it up. It was more stable. I'm trying to think. In GVG, you had to deal with a bunch of mech mage, a bunch of mech shaman. So you wanted those taunts from Handlock. You wanted that. You wanted to be able to get these threats out, get them taunted up, be able to deal with these threats through Dark Bomb because Warlocks got Dark Bomb and all that. So that's why Handlock was really good, because they were able to deal with. They had many War Clears with Demon Wrath. They might have played one in that deck, and then you had your 2 Shadow Flames and your 2 Hellfires to deal with this overwhelming War Presence. Warrior ended up just getting Shield Maiden, which allowed him to gain another 10 armor. So you're running Shield Maiden into Shield Block. 4 of those. That's 20 armor. That's effectively 50 health plus your hero power. You're shooting for the late game in this deck. Also, they received some cool legendaries like Emperor Thor's and Dr. Boom. Dr. Boom just being the best at legendary in the game. I don't know if that may have changed from this point. I still think it's the best. And like I said, you're running 2 big game hunters because of prominence of Warlock during that meta. And of course, what I did was I took out Ragnarus for Ysera, because if you were shooting more for the late game, and more people were running big game hunter because of Warlock's dominance, you would take out the Ragnarus for Ysera. Once you played Ysera, there was no real way to deal with it. Like, unlike Ragnaros, and then Ysera was giving you that gradual advantage through the Dream cards, Ysera Awakens, Nightmare, and all that. And then lastly, on to what we have now. Something I wanted to point out for Warrior, and how it actually, why it's played this way, is when you're getting to the late game, right, you want to go into this fatigue. And if your opponent runs out of resources, they can't deal with all your threats, and even if they do deal with all your threats, you're still in fatigue. You have this really good hero power that lets you gain 2 armor per turn, and especially with the release of the Grand Tournament, they're able to gain 4 armor per turn, which puts them strong into the fatigue game. And even if your opponent might have like a hero power like mages, they just can't get around your hero power. So how the deck changed now is, what did they get from TGT? You got Bash, you got I included the Brawl in here in this one, I must have missed it. And Leaving Explorers gave you the Fierce Monkey. Fierce Monkey's we're getting into another mixture of a meta. You can basically play anything, aggro, control, whatnot. Fierce Monkey was a really good addition to Warrior because it has Taunt. It's a spider tank with Taunt, and being able to deal with this forcing aggro to deal with this 3/4 lets you get farther in the late game. Get your Justicar out, another card that Warrior got, and you're getting that tank up hero power to get the 4 armor per turn. But that's really all they got that's now played. Bash. Yeah, Bash, Justicar, and Fierce Monkey. Like I said, I took a bunch of other decks, put it together. What I saw on forums was the best build for Control Hunter. I sort of mixed it around, just so you saw what the different cards were. So, what's Fatigue Warrior? I mean, my bad. What's Control Warrior looking like right now? It is a deck that has really good matchups. It has a really bad matchup in like Freeze Mage, it has really good matchups versus Freeze Mage. It has really bad matchups now versus Priest. I did another video about why I think Priest is the best deck in the game right now, the best class. The problem with what are pros and cons about Control Warrior, right? Why should you run this over another deck? Really getting its aggro, right? You have your Armor Smiths, you have your Crew Taskmasters, you can deal with these small threats really easily, and then your opponent runs out of steam in the late game. And then you just overwhelm them with these Shield Maidens, your Grom, your Alexstrasza, your Ysera, and they are playing Savannah Highmane, they're playing Doomhammer, they're playing... What's another aggro-y card? They're playing Doom Guard, right? This deck has a really good matchup versus Reno decks. Reno decks are meant to stall for the late game, but you're only going up to 30. Warrior's going up to 50, and when you're in the late game, 50 health is more effective than 30 health. And when you're playing a Reno deck, you normally draw into your Reno, so you're farther in the fatigue game than this Warrior is. so you're taking damage faster. And even though you have this extra 30 health to work with, as the warrior whittles you down with, 1 damage acolytes, 3 damage acolytes if buffed by Cruel Taskmaster, just not something that Rio's going to win against. The only bad matchup I'd say that Control Warrior right now has is Control Priest, mainly because of the introduction of Entomb, but that's about it. I don't understand I don't necessarily understand why this deck has gotten so stabilized. If you look at any different deck that pros have, you're going to see basically this list. Unless they're trying to innovate something, the list is going to look exactly the same, maybe 1 or 2 cards different. You can't change much in this deck, unless new cards come out and you get like a better Acolyte of Pain for Warrior that's a 2/4 that draws cards. It's just such a stable deck right now in the meta, and people are done with it. People are going to bring this deck to tournaments. It's been finalized. It's been optimized, and I think that's why it's stayed prominent. If people are tinkering around with it, then the deck's just not good, because you have these faults in the deck. But since many people have tried to make this deck work and they found a really good build for it, that's why it stays so good in the meta right now. Right, that's why it stays so good in the meta. So I hope you guys learned something about Control Warrior. Like I said, leave some comments, throw a video, come check me out on Twitch, and I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.